Do you want to give Anand his keys back?
I think he wants to play the marionette there.
Well, too bad. Too bad. Hello and welcome to Please Hang Out With Me, a show about constraints. My name is Shannon Kennedy. With me as always is a baby. Can you say hello, baby? No? Okay. We'll work on it. Oh, actually, let me open that gate so the cats can go use the litter box.
Okay. He'll be right back. Okay.
No.
And he's back.
No.
Nope.
No. Okay. And we're back. With us today is Anand Vedawala, thank you.
That's me.
Executive Director of San Francisco Zine Fest, a teacher, a zinester, a bon vivant, and someone that I'm very excited to speak with and have a conversation with about what you do, because I feel like we've known each other for a while.
Yes.
And the only reason that I know as much about you as I do now is because this is the third time that we're recording this interview due to previous technical difficulties.
Yes. I am glad to do it. I'm also hoping there won't be a fourth time, but I'm still
I feel like this is how you talk to your older students.
I am much meaner to my older students.
I appreciate that you recognize that I'm much more emotionally vulnerable than a child.
Yes, there you go.
Thank you. Anand, you immigrated to the United States, to New Jersey, with your family when you were 9. Is that right?
10.
When you were 10? Mm-hmm. And you have spoken to me previously about how... Are you going to eat this? You and your family had a position in society in India, and then you moved to the United States and found yourself in a very different position.
Yeah, it is odd. Turn that. Okay. You kind of don't realize your privilege or even as a kid until, we moved to the U.S. I mean, in India, I had friends who were of different backgrounds, but mainly of different religion, because I like to say to a lot of folks that while I experienced racism for the first time here in the U.S., there were definitely different prejudices and different biases and different systemic... there was a different system altogether there, but that had to do more with religion in India.
I was going to say, are you talking about caste? Are you talking about religious
Not just
differences?
caste, but religious differences, definitely. Caste, it was there. Again, when you have that much privilege, you don't actually see how you're affecting or how your family or how your position is affecting others, because you don't have to think about it.
Sure.
This is
that's why they call it privilege.
It was, And when we moved to the U.S. and then realizing for the first time, it's like, oh wait, my brown color is somehow an offense to some other people. Got into lots of fights my first year. It was nice. And the only thing I could say back, because I didn't speak English at the time, and the only thing I could say was, and someone had taught it to me, and just say, back to you. Whatever they would say, it's like back to you. And for some reason that offended a lot of people also. So lots of fights.
Actual fist fights?
Actual fist fights. It was much, much worse for my brother, as I've mentioned previously, where he started high school, so... I mean, he was coming home bloodied and bruised, whereas I was just getting into fights at school or getting chased down the street by older kids, non-brown kids, non-black and brown kids. It was different. But I realized even the friends I made, the Indian friends that I made here, they were only more, just people of the same caste in a way, because they're the ones who mainly had the privilege to travel or to be able to afford to travel to a different country. I went back to India in 2004, 10 years after I lived in the US. So as a 20-year-old going back and seeing everything with new eyes, basically, and realizing I was part of the problem when I was there. And then, of course, bringing all of that back here in the US and then trying to make a difference here as much as I can. Especially now as the executive director of a Zine Fest and trying to be as accessible as possible.
So talk a little bit about that. So I was the director of Zine Fest, and I should say Lauren Davis, my co-director, is now your co-director, who's been like the person who actually makes sure that Zine Fest like actually happens every year. Shout out to Lauren. What's up?
Yes, thank you, Lauren, for making me be aware of like several mistakes that I had made.
So when I became the director taking over for Liz Mayorga, one of the things that like our team did was really try to move towards sort of equity in like how the Zine Fest run. Everything from like switching over to an application process so that we weren't just first come first serve and then just getting all the same people who were already on the mailing list applying and getting tables at Zine Fest. And things like getting nonprofit status so we could fundraise to get ASL interpreters and wheelchair accessible shuttle. What challenges have you dealt with? Because I feel like we have similar goals.
Yeah. So one of our goals for last year was to just be as involved with the Bay Area as possible. That's one of the reasons we started doing partnerships with the Oakland Public Library and bookstores and the Mission, because we're like, these are neighborhoods that we don't really have a presence. And we just from last year realizing that we kind of do feel like the only people who know about Zine Fest are the people who have been either tabling or attending. And then it has been a challenge, like how do we get more people to be involved, and especially just trying to diversify it more and more. How do we bring in artists and writers and just creators who otherwise don't really have a space for it, and how do we make ourselves accessible to them? What we are trying to do right now is just go to different neighborhoods and reach out to different organizations or even community centers and say, hey, would you like to collaborate? Would you be interested in doing a zine workshop? Because we want to show, especially kids, because with Oakland Library we're doing workshops with kids, families, and teens. There are separate ones just for that.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So kids can know from a young age that they can tell their stories. Their stories matter no matter what they're writing about, and there is an audience for them. Actually, 2 cafes just recently reached out to us in different neighborhoods of San Francisco. That does look pretty bad. They're just a mush. It's great. You know, he's made a smoothie out of it. That's fine. He's an innovator.
We're gonna get some Series A funding for this new smoothie startup. My kid just turns whatever you want into sort of a wasp mud nest.
Well, he's challenging this tool. He's saying, "How dare you tell me to?"
That's right. He's challenging preconceptions about whether food should go into your body or just come back out.
Yeah, there you go.
Throw this away.
Cafes, reaching out to us and saying, can we do a collaboration so we can get a Zine Fest or any kind of thing, let's do a reading, anything. We want to collaborate with you because we want to have a literary presence in our neighborhood.
Right.
And that's been nice.
In a way, that sounds like best of both worlds, because the hardest Zine Fest to throw is the first one.
Yeah.
So this means that you get to expose yourself to... No, let me rephrase that. This means you get to...
All the time.
This means you get to introduce yourself to communities and neighborhoods that don't know what a zine is. And these organizations get to work with some experts on how this kind of thing runs and operates successfully.
He doesn't have a toy.
Okay, starting again.
Yes.
And Saturday there was the National Women's March.
Yes.
And Oakland Public Library, whom you've worked with before, reached out to San Francisco Zine Fest and asked if he wanted to table at the march itself.
At the march itself,
to literally set up a table on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
What kind of a reaction did you get from people who were out that day?
It was great. One, I didn't expect folks to actually stop. Sure. I mean, they are marching, and we had table. We said, okay, these are all the zines. Actually, not all the zines. All of the zines you see on this table, it's just a small sample of the zines we have in our zine library, the San Francisco Zine Fest library. But all of these here were written by women also, so if you want to just check these out. Also, if you don't know what zines are, we also have a workshop that's happening. And we'll show you how to make a one-page zine. So I didn't think people would have time to stop and actually make a zine, but people stopped. They actually cheered us on. They were just happy to see and support just the library and the Zine Fest. I liked how there were mothers who said, I remember these from the 90s. And their kids, or their daughters specifically, would say, I don't know what these are. And they're like, these are great. And then the daughters would want to make zines. And at times there would also be daughters who'd say, I made this in art school. And the mom would be like, I don't know what this is. And the daughters would tell the mom how to make a zine. And it was wonderful.
How did you get started making zines?
This was at high school. Like my classmate I have known since the 7th grade. They had zines. And I believe it was like Riot Girl zines that they had. And I remember first seeing them in their room in Islip, New Jersey. And just kind of keeping a note of it in my mind that I'm like, I want to do something. This is great. I could make myself heard. I have my experience that I would love to share. I could do this, but I didn't actually do anything with it. But I just thought, these are wonderful. These are great. I want to do something like this, but never actually taking the step to do it. In my undergrad, we had an art show and we wanted to talk about the different artists we were representing.
Wait, hold up. Didn't you go to college for engineering?
I did go to college for engineering, but I was the president of the art society. I still didn't think I was really doing anything with the zine community until I started making a collaborative zine in 2009, where artists had 6 months to create and contribute 3 works of art, and art could be anything, and I would just compile it together. And it turned into 22 friends and I putting this zine together. And it was good that I had other friends involved because I would have given up. I'm not paying attention for like 6 months. I'm trying to get this thing to work. But that helped and that kept me going. And then this past year was the 10th year that I did it. And then I stopped. I'm like, no more. I have to do something else.
Right.
And I think it made me more involved with the zine community when I came to San Francisco Zine Fest for the first time in 2011. I was like, oh, I could actually sell my stuff instead of just putting in lots of money and then making these zines, giving them back out to friends, and then not doing anything with it. Was that color when he had it in his mouth? Or
how many questions do you want to ask about his process?
Oh, no.
So one of your zines, let me start the sentence again. Something that I think is very different about your relationship to Zine Fest versus mine is that I don't make zines, whereas you are just like constantly working on something new. A lot of your zines...
Yes.
Shout out to Zebra Pizza. Your zine is making a cameo right now. And a lot of your zines are about being a queer South Asian man and about what that culture is like. 'Cause that's not a culture that's well known in the West, but it's still like something that's really fully formed. One thing that you talked to me about is that it's you drew a distinction between like it's not daddy culture, it's uncle culture.
Yeah, and there's a zine about that. Hot cha-chas. In gay communities here, there's this whole thing about calling someone a hot daddy or calling someone a daddy. Where in South Asian queer cultures, in the communities, I found out by going on a date with someone, they refer to them as uncles, not so much as daddies. Google was like, don't you mean uncles? Like, you're trying to look up Indian daddies, but I think you mean Indian uncles. Here's a suggestion. And I'm like, yes, Indian uncles, you are right. Then,
I like that someone at Google was like, we have to get this algorithm correct.
I mean, this was also a couple of years back. Maybe they've improved it. Maybe they're just calling it, don't you mean Indian cha-chas? Right. Cha-cha. We'll see what they've now changed it to. But, and then I went on a date with someone when I was in India 2.5 years ago. And he pointed out some uncles who were just walking towards the darker areas of the park. And I was like, hey, you said uncles. And he called them cha-chas. And I was like, yeah, cha-chas. And yeah, and then I realized there's this whole thing that I could be talking about different hot cha-chas I've known throughout my life. You. My family knows I make zines. They think of it as my book thing, where I just keep hoarding books. It's like, why don't you just put up a big sale and give them all away? I know what you're trying to say. You think of zines as clutter in my life. It's like, you just have too many books. I'm like, but they're my books. They don't really know the content of the zines. Even though I haven't hidden it, I'm just like, this is about hot South Asian uncles. I think my family likes that I'm doing things, and they're supportive in that I do a lot of these artistic projects, but I don't know how they would react if they knew what the content itself was of a lot of these, because some of them get very specific. Baby. Oh, what's that?
Yeah, all good.
I
Hi, baby. So you're not out as queer to everybody in your family.
I am not. I feel really dumb about this, that I didn't put it together to myself, like, until I was 17. When I couldn't stop thinking about one of my classmates. And I was like, oh my god. And actually, even then, I just thought, I like seeing this boy every day. He makes me happy. Mm-hmm. That's it. He was a classmate, didn't even know him that well. And that was it. And it wasn't until I told one of my friends who I liked, because then I was also teasing friends about it. It's like, oh, I like someone, they make me happy. Mm-hmm. And they were like, who is it? I'm like, I won't tell, because I was dumb. A teenager.
Sure.
And then I told someone, and it wasn't until I told that person.
You told like one of your
one of my, one of my best. No, I'm sorry. I told one of my closest friends about who
I like this other guy.
Yeah, I like this guy, and they were just like, okay, because I mean, he was also gay, so he's like, okay. Actually, I'd say 3 of my closest friends identify as queer, so, and they also just said, well, why didn't you just tell us before? Because, I mean, we're queer. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, and also now I'm realizing, oh wait, does this mean I'm gay? And that was not so great, finding that out late in the game, because just being conditioned for such a long time that this is what's going to happen. You're going to go to school, then college, then get married, have kids, and all that other stuff. And I just assumed that was the plan. I was always the kid who like stuck by the plan, got straight A's. So I'm like, everything's working out according to plan. And then this didn't. This wasn't even a plan. This was just, I don't know what this is, because it was real. It wasn't conditioning anymore. And I also told the kid, the straight kid I had a big crush on. He also took it well, which just made it worse, because I'm like, I need to stop talking to you, because now this just makes me like you more, because you've been super understanding about all this, and now I'm just embarrassed. And a year later, I told 5 of my cousins, 2 of whom took it well, the other 3 not so well. Not badly, but they were... 2 of them cried and just said, oh no, like, think about your parents. And I'm like, but okay. Right. And one, of course, said, if my brother turns out gay because of you, like, I will never forgive you. And I'm like, okay then. Fortunately, all 5 of them are incredibly supportive now. Even the cousins who had a negative reaction to it, they've apologized sincerely, like, didn't have to ask or anything. They just said, you know what, I just wanted to say this because I've always felt bad about this. Pretty much everyone in the family knows. It's just something that's unspoken. Right. Because they've been trying to get me married since I was 20 years old, and I refused to. They've kind of put 2 and 2 together. Like, well, he refuses to see any of the girls we recommend. So maybe... And he keeps saying he's never going to get married. And he keeps having these roommates that are only men. Older men. Something is going on. I've told my dad. I mean, my dad told me not to come out to other folks in the family. It's like, I will do it. In our family, the way it works is the men talk first, then they tell the women, and then us kids in the second tier get to hear it later on. So I'm like, all right, if you want to handle that, you handle it. But if not, if someone asks, I'm just going to tell them, and he's been okay with that.
And your partner is also a white man.
Is also a white man. When it comes to conversation about race and experiences, well, he's very supportive and tries to be understanding. And it's just, he's not going to understand it sometimes, and he's not going to get it. And that can be frustrating, because as a teacher, as much patience that I have for children, I don't have that patience for adults. And if an adult doesn't get it the first time, just like, how do you not get this? How have you gone through your life not knowing this? But again, he's, like we talked about before, when you come from a place of privilege, you don't think about these things, and you won't experience them. I think my family will have more of an issue with Mike being older than me than him being white. Because colorism and just prejudices toward darker skinned folks exist within Indian communities. So him being white will actually be a positive for them. They're like, oh, at least he's white.
This isn't the only way in which you had to, like, quote unquote come out. Like, you also went to school and were an engineer for a long time. And then left that and went to animation school, and then left that and became a teacher. And then on top of all that, you also moved out.
Yes. There has been, you are right. Thank you for reminding me of all these experiences where my mom cried or my dad cried. Great. No.
You
No.
come on my show.
There was that just pressure of like, this kid is going to do well because he's so far the only one of the kids who's getting straight A's. So then I just kind of went into engineering because there was that expectation of becoming a doctor or an engineer. And I thought, I can't be a doctor because I would feel horrible if I killed someone, like just directly. Engineering, bad design, indirectly like killing someone, didn't feel so bad about that.
Right. Couldn't you be
I didn't.
You could be like a podiatrist or something. You don't have to be a brain surgeon.
A podiatrist? That's not respectful. There's a special kind of doctor. Come on. It's an Indian family you're talking about. How dare you? A podiatrist. There's
podiatrists make good money. You can be a foot doctor if you want to, okay?
So yeah, I went from being the first engineer in the family to then not being the first. I mean, still the first engineer, but then just not being an engineer.
Yeah.
To then being someone who moved out.
And this is that thing that comes up again and again is think of what you're doing to your parents.
Yeah, I had a cousin recently who told me, like, in exact terms, and it was just very surprising because I hadn't seen her in more than 20 years. And then she moved here and she just wanted to talk. She's like, I really have to talk to you because you did all these things that I don't want my kids to do, and you're not getting married? Like, you're not going to get married? And I was like, no, I don't plan on it. And she just looked at me and said, your parents are depressed because of you. And I was like, oh, hello, cousin I haven't spoken to in 20 years. She has kids who are in their 20s. She just said, I feel like I brought them to the US and I'm afraid now they'll be like you. And I'm like, I don't know what kind of decisions they'll make, but if they don't want to do something, you should try to respect it or try to understand why they don't want to do something. Another cousin came up and they were just like, what did you say to her? She's crying now. And I'm like, I don't... All right then. So yeah, that part still happens about that guilt of like what you are doing to the entire family or the parents specifically. But because it's happened with every little thing that I've tried to do, that I've kind of gotten used to it. It doesn't affect me as much. So that's been nice. As the great philosopher once said, thank you, next.
What do you love about teaching? Is it nothing?
Lots,
you can say nothing. That'll be like
no. There are lots of things. So many things.
What's one thing that you love about teaching?
I love being a person of color who other kids can identify with. I have seen kids actually smile as soon as they see me, like their eyes widen and everything, just because they're like, they had never seen a brown person or an Indian person in the classroom as a teacher. I think I told you about this one interaction once where a student asked me, they're like, do you speak Arabic? And they were so shy about it. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't. And their face just dropped. And then I said, I speak Hindi. And all of a sudden they were just like, I know Hindi too. And it was such a good moment. I hope she's doing well. It's happened with high schoolers also. It's happened because they'll ask me, they're like, what part of India are you from? And they'll just want to know more. One of my favorite students, and he's now in a college on the East Coast. He was from Azerbaijan, and he and I ended up just connecting really well about American culture to Indian culture. And I mean, this was a unique and fantastic kid in that he would thank every single teacher and say, thank you for teaching me at the end of the class. But yeah, I guess knowing lots of kids who you see have enormous potential and you just want to help them and you're in a position where you can guide them in a certain way, or help them widen just their thinking, and that's been great.
Okay, I think that's all our time.
Okay.
I think our co-host has reached the end of the interview. I want to thank Anand Vedawala for joining us today. Thank you so much, Anand.
Yes.
Wonderful to see you, as always.
Thank you for having me.
Just being strangled a little bit. I want to thank my co-host, a baby. Please Hang Out With Me is a production of Artwork Practice. Visit us on the web at artworkpractice.com. And Anand, where can people find your work on the internet?
They can find it on Instagram. It's my full name, Anand Vedawala, or my website. Again, anandvedawala.com.
And would you sing the closing theme song?
Oh my god, I forgot about this.
Well, I shut the show down.
Can it
take a
just
break
be
for just a
music?
second.
Yeah, there we go.
Just sing something. Don't get us a copyright strike. Just sing something.
There, it can
Just sing a song to this baby.
Okay. This baby. Okay, yes.
Are you doing spoken word?
No. I was trying to say this baby. How dare you? Let us experiment. He loves spoken word.
No son of mine.
This baby and I had an interview with this other guy who asked us lots of questions several times over 3 days, 2 days, but 3 interviews. But now I have to go. So baby, say bye, 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 bye. That's it.